Okay, let's try and unpack this. Just imagine the sheer effort, right?
Yeah.
Dedicating maybe 50, maybe even 75 years of your life building this huge thing
Hmm.
based purely on instructions. There's no rain, no sign it's needed.
None at all.
Mhm.
Just faith in the command.
That's the kind of commitment we're talking about with Noah's Ark. Decades. It's
Yeah.
kind of mind-boggling when you really think about it that way.
It really is. The scale of it definitely sets the scene. And this story, Genesis 6 through 8, it's one we all sort of think we know.
Right, the animals two by two, the big boat.
Exactly. But when you look closer, there's some, well, really profound things in there. And that's what we want to get into today.
Yeah, this deep dive isn't just, the surface story. We want to dig into the core ideas. Things like obedience when it makes zero logical sense.
And judgment, definitely.
Well,
But also grace.
grace, yeah, and that whole theme of a fresh start and new beginning. So thinking about that huge timeline, where does this story really start to resonate?
Well, it really has to start with Noah himself. Genesis 6, verse 9. Okay, it
Right.
tells us, Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and crucially, he walked with God.
Right.
That's not just like a footnote. It feels foundational to everything that follows. What do you make of that description?
Walked with God.
Yeah.
It sounds so continuous, like an ongoing relationship, a whole way of living, not just, being good occasionally.
Yeah, exactly. A sustained connection.
And being blameless when the context is a world apparently heading for major judgment. Well, that really makes him stand out, doesn't it? He's living differently.
Precisely. It sets up that his actions, building the ark, aren't coming out of nowhere or just sudden panic. It's rooted in a whole life of listening, responding.
Responding, yeah. And think about the context you mentioned. Building this massive boat year after year, no history of a global flood ever happening before.
Right.
He must have faced, well, not just disbelief, but maybe outright scorn, mockery.
Oh, almost certainly you have to assume that.
Yeah.
Imagine telling your neighbors you're building for a flood that's going to cover the world when it's sunny outside.
Yeah, for decades. How does that long, slow process, that seemingly pointless work, kind of amplify the whole obedience theme?
It makes it so much deeper, doesn't it? It's not just one command, go do this. It's a posture, like you said.
Yeah.
A sustained commitment to something totally invisible to everyone else.
Even when people are laughing at you, that points to some serious inner conviction.
Definitely. And that ties into the instructions God gives him. It wasn't just build a big boat.
No.
No, the text is really specific. It says exact instructions, dimensions, materials, even the kind of wood gopher wood. It's like a detailed divine blueprint.
A blueprint. That's interesting. What's the significance of it being so meticulous, do you think?
Well, it suggests purpose, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
that every part of this plan mattered. It wasn't random or just left up to Noah's best guess.
Right. So salvation in this story comes through following that very specific divine guidance. Makes you wonder about the why behind each measurement, each detail.
It does. And the text hammers home Noah's faithfulness to it. Genesis 6:22 says, Noah did everything just as God commanded him.
Everything. That word feels important.
It really does.
Yeah.
Total obedience. And following that plan leads to, well, the next incredible part, gathering the animals.
Ah, yes. The famous part.
2 of every kind,
Yeah.
male and female. And then 7 pairs of the clean animals. What kind of picture does that paint for you?
It's just this, wow, this almost unbelievable parade, right? All these creatures heading towards this one huge boat.
Hmm.
Like the ark becomes this focal point for all life on Earth, this sanctuary moving towards safety while everything else is, well, teetering. It's a powerful image.
Yeah.
Preservation amidst destruction.
Yeah, someone called it a mini Eden floating on chaos. A pocket of life deliberately saved.
That's a great phrase.
And again, Noah's reaction is immediate. He doesn't second guess. He doesn't stall. He gets his family and goes into the ark when God tells him to, trusting.
And then comes that line, it always strikes me. Genesis 7:16. After they're all inside, then the Lord shut him in.
Powerful.
It's more than just closing a door, isn't it? It feels like a deliberate divine action. What's going on there? What are the implications?
It feels dual, you know. On one hand, it's the finality. Judgment is coming for the world outside. That door is closed.
No turning back.
Right. But on the other hand, for Noah and his family and the animals inside, it's absolute security, protection. Salvation is sealed at that moment.
Sealed in by God himself.
Exactly. And then the flood begins. 40 days, 40 nights of rain, the waters rise, everything outside the ark perishes.
Yeah.
How do you see this flood beyond just a, cataclysmic weather event?
Well, the context given earlier in Genesis about the violence and corruption filling the earth, it frames the flood as a consequence, doesn't it?
A consequence. How so?
Like, it's not just random destruction, it's presented as a direct response, a divine reckoning, maybe, a cleansing of the earth from all that negativity.
A cleansing. Yes. But right in the middle of this story of judgment, there's this pivot. Genesis 8, verse 1. It starts, "But God remembered Noah."
Ah.
After all that destruction, what's the impact of those simple words, God remembered?
Oh, it's huge. It's like a breath of fresh air amidst the storm. It means he wasn't forgotten. It signals hope, right? That the destruction isn't the end of the story.
Exactly. It's the turning point. The rain stops, the waters start to go down, renewal becomes possible.
Yeah.
Eventually, the ark rests.
On the mountains of Ararat.
Right. And Noah's actions afterwards, they're marked by this. Patience, continued trust. He doesn't just throw the doors open.
No, he sends out the birds.
Yeah, the raven, then the dove. Testing the waters, quite literally, looking for signs of land. And that dove coming back with the olive leaf. That's such an enduring symbol, isn't it?
It really is the first little sign of hope. Proof that life is returning, that the waters are going down. A new beginning is actually possible.
A tangible sign. And yet, even with that sign, Noah still waits.
Waits. He doesn't leave right away.
No, he waits for God to explicitly tell him it's time to leave the ark. Think about that. After months and months cooped up in there.
Yeah, you'd think he'd be desperate to get out.
Exactly. But he waits for the command. What does that continued patience tell us about his character, his faith?
It shows this incredibly deep trust, I think. It wasn't just about the initial obedience of building the ark. It extends to trusting God's timing, even when the immediate danger seems over.
Yeah, it's not just about panic or self-preservation anymore. It's a deeper reliance.
And then when they finally do leave, what's the very first thing he does? You'd think maybe build a shelter, find food.
Practical things, right?
Yeah, but no. Genesis 8.2 says he built an altar. His first act is worship. Sacrifices. What is that priority signal?
It says so much about his focus, doesn't it? His immediate reaction is gratitude, worship, acknowledging God's deliverance before anything else.
Perspective.
Exactly. And God's response to that worship is just as important. The promise.
The promise never again to curse the ground because of humans, despite human nature.
How do you read that promise coming right after such a massive judgment?
It feels like grace, pure grace, born directly out of that judgment. God acknowledges the human condition, the inclination of the heart, but still commits to this different relationship, this stability.
A covenant of stability.
Right.
So looking at the whole story, the ark becomes much more than just a big boat.
Definitely. It's this powerful symbol, isn't it? God's provision, a way through judgment for those who, like Noah, walk with him.
Yeah, it wraps up all those themes we talked about, that radical obedience, the reality of judgment, but also the surprising endurance of grace.
Absolutely. It covers so much ground.
And next time, we'll actually dig into that promise more and the incredible sign God gave for it.
Ah, the rainbow, a covenant written across the sky, you could say.
Exactly. So maybe something for you listening to think about. What arcs might exist in your own life, or even in our shared human story.
You mean like ways through difficult times?
Yeah, or unexpected sources of hope, of preservation when things seem overwhelming or when we're facing the consequences of, well, our own actions. It's just a thought to carry with you.